They flooded my yard on purpose. Yeah, not by accident. Not, oops, the rain got crazy. I mean deliberately engineered, planned out like some kind of suburban water warfare. And the wild part is, they really thought I was just gonna sit there and take it. I'd been living in that house for about 10 years. Quiet little place in a neighborhood outside of Denver. Nothing fancy, just enough yard space to breathe. A couple trees, decent drainage, and one small quirk. My property sat just slightly lower than the homes behind me. Not dramatically. We're talking inches, but enough that when it rained hard, water would naturally drift downhill toward my yard. And for a decade, that was never an issue. The soil absorbed it, the grass handled it, and the old neighbor, a retired guy named George, understood the balance. He never messed with the grading, never tried to outsmart nature, because he knew, you change one thing, you change everything. We had this unspoken agreement. You respect the land respects you. Simple. Then George sold the house. And within, I kid you not, 2 weeks, the new owners rolled in like they were flipping a reality TV episode. New patio, new stonework, raised garden beds, everything lifted higher, cleaner, shinier, and yeah, I'll admit. At first glance, it looked good, like magazine good. The kind of backyard that says, we definitely complain at HOA meetings. But here's the thing nobody tells you about those upgrades. They don't just change your yard, they change everyone else's too. The first storm hit late, sometime after midnight. One of those heavy Colorado rains that just sits on your roof and doesn't let up. I didn't think much of it, rolled over, went back to sleep. By morning, though, something felt off. I stepped outside with my coffee and immediately noticed puddles. Not the usual damp patches or soft spots. I'm talking standing water, spread out in weird places, like the yard didn't know where to send it anymore. And that's when I saw it. Right along the back fence line, this brand new white PVC pipe sticking out from their yard. Angled just enough, just perfectly enough to point straight into mine. I stood there for a second, just staring at it, trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like maybe it's temporary, maybe it's unfinished, maybe I'm overthinking it. But then the second storm hit 2 days later, and that's when it got real. Water didn't just flow anymore, it rushed. It poured out of that pipe like someone turned on a faucet, dumping everything from their newly elevated backyard directly into mine. It wasn't nature anymore, it was design. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I walked over, knocked on their door. The husband answered, mid-40s gym shirt, that looked like he's always slightly annoyed at something. I introduced myself, kept it polite, explained what I was seeing, how the water was collecting, how it wasn't happening before, how that pipe seemed to be the issue. He listened, kind of, not really. Then he goes, yeah, our contractor installed a standard drainage system. Water has to go somewhere. I pointed right past him, toward the pipe. Yeah, but it's going into my yard. I'll never forget this part. He shrugs. Actually shrugs. Like I just told him my mail got delivered late or something. It's just rainwater, he says. It'll dry. Just rainwater. That's the moment I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a choice. I tried one more time, kept my voice steady, explained that directing runoff onto someone else's property isn't okay, that there are rules about this stuff, that we could figure out a solution that worked for both of us. But he was already done, mentally checked out. Look, he said, we paid for the work, it's done. You might want to look into improving your drainage, Ami. And that right there, that was the line. Because what he was really saying wasn't about water, it was about control. It was, I changed my property, and now your problem is yours to deal with. And the crazy part, he thought he was being reasonable. So I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, didn't threaten anything. I just nodded, said, all right, and walked back to my house. But in my head, something shifted. Because I'd lived there 10 years, I knew that land better than he ever would. I knew how the water moved, how the soil reacted, where the natural flow lines were. And more importantly, I knew one thing he clearly didn't. If you push water somewhere it doesn't belong, it's going to find its way back. And this time, I wasn't going to stop it. Now, let me pause the story for a second. Because this right here, this situation, it's way more common than people think. And it's not just about bad neighbors. It's about misunderstanding how property rights actually work. Or worse, pretending not to understand. According to standard procedure in most U.S. municipalities, and yeah, this varies a little by state, but the core idea is consistent. You cannot alter your land in a way that redirects water onto someone else's property. That's not just frowned upon, that's liability. If your modifications cause runoff damage, you're responsible. Period. From a legal perspective, what my neighbor did falls into what's often called improper drainage or nuisance runoff. It doesn't matter if it's just rainwater, because once you channel it, once you concentrate it through a pipe or grading change, you've turned a natural condition into a man-made problem. And man-made problems come with consequences. Now here's where it gets interesting, because legally, I had options. I could have filed a complaint, brought in the city, maybe even taken it to small claims or civil court. But that takes time, money, and honestly, patience. I didn't feel like offering someone who shrugged me off like that. And psychologically, this is a classic move. This is a psychological trap. He minimized the issue. It's just water. He shifted responsibility. You should fix your yard. And he relied on one assumption, that I wouldn't push back. That I'd either tolerate it or go through some long, exhausting process to fight it. People like that don't respond to arguments. They respond to outcomes. And I wasn't interested in arguing anymore. I was interested in changing the outcome. So yeah, I stopped talking. That was the first move. No more knocking on his door. No more trying to work it out. Because at that point, it was clear we weren't playing the same game. He thought this was about convenience. I knew it was about consequences. The very next morning, I made 2 calls. One to a local surveyor, another to a landscaping contractor I'd worked with years back. A guy named David. Solid dude. No nonsense. The kind of guy who doesn't overtalk. Just shows up, looks at your yard, and already knows what needs to happen. The surveyor came first. Took measurements, checked the boundary line, mapped the slope, and honestly, I already knew what he was going to say before he said it. That pipe. It sat right on the edge of their property, but the angle was intentional. It was pointed into my yard, not just letting water pass through naturally, but actively directing it. He looked at me and goes, "Yeah, this isn't how it's supposed to be done." That was all I needed. Not for court, not for a complaint, just confirmation. Because here's the thing. I wasn't trying to win legally. I was trying to reset the physics of the situation. A few days later, David and his crew rolled up. Early morning, trucks, gravel, compactors, the whole setup. And I'll give my neighbor this. He noticed immediately. I saw him step out onto his patio, coffee in hand, squinting like he was trying to figure out whether this was about to become his problem. And yeah, it was. He walked over as the crew started unloading materials. "What's all this?" he asked. I kept it simple, just fixing my yard. He didn't like that answer. You could tell. People like him, they need details. They need control. They need to feel like they're still ahead of the situation. But I didn't give him anything else. Then the work started. First step, the barrier, not some flimsy edge or decorative border. I'm talking a solid retaining ridge, about 2 feet high, built right along the back boundary line where that pipe was aimed. Packed soil, reinforced with stone blocks, leveled, compacted, clean, precise, intentional. You could literally watch his expression change as it went up. That slight confidence he had before, gone, replaced with this quiet calculation, like he was starting to realize he might have misread the situation. But we weren't done, not even close. Behind that ridge, David reshaped the entire grade of my yard. And this is where it got smart. Instead of sloping the water toward my house, which would have been a disaster, or just letting it sit, we angled it sideways, parallel to the fence line, controlled, directed, and then came the key piece, the drainage channel. A long, clean trench filled with stone, running the entire length of that barrier, designed to catch every drop of water that hit it and move it fast, not randomly, not chaotically, but exactly where we wanted it to go. And where did it go? The far corner of my yard. Now here's the detail that made all the difference. That corner just happened to sit right beside the lowest point of his newly built patio. Not dramatically lower, but enough. Just enough. We finished the job in one day. No drama, no noise complaints, no confrontation. Just quiet, efficient work. And then we waited. 3 days later, the rain came back. Not a drizzle, a real storm. The kind that tests everything. I stepped outside as the first real flow started, and sure enough, here it came. Water blasting out of that pipe like before. Confident, aggressive, like it still thought it owned the place. But this time, it hit the ridge and stopped. Well, not stopped, redirected. You could actually see the moment it changed behavior. The water pooled briefly against the barrier, then slipped into the channel, picked up speed, and started moving sideways along the trench. Smooth, controlled, almost surgical. I glanced over, and there he was, standing on his patio again, watching, no coffee this time, just watching. The water reached the corner, built up slightly, and then spilled. Not violently. Not destructively. Just enough. Just enough to cross back over, right into that low section of his patio. At first, it didn't look like much. A little pooling, manageable, but the rain didn't stop. And over the next hour, that small pool became a pattern. Water collecting, not draining the way he expected, sitting right on top of those brand new tiles. Not deep, not catastrophic, but persistent, annoying, constant, exactly like mine had been. By morning, his patio looked like a mirror. Thin layer of standing water across the surface, catching the gray sky above. I stepped outside, took a look, then went back in. No reaction, no celebration, just balance. A couple days passed. Then, finally, he came over. Different energy this time. No shrug. No attitude. No passive dismissal. Just a guy who suddenly understood cause and effect a lot better than he did a week ago. "Hey," he said, standing at the edge of my yard. "I've been noticing some water collecting near our patio." I nodded. "Yeah, I've seen that." He glanced over at the drainage channel, then back at his pipe. And you could actually see the moment it clicked. The full picture, start to finish. No anger, just realization. "So, is there a way to adjust this?" he asked, and I kept my voice calm. Same way I had from the beginning. It already was adjusted. Silence for a second. He looked down again, thinking, recalculating, then finally asked the only question that mattered. "What do you want me to do?" And there it was. No more assumptions, no more control. Just accountability. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Redirect your pipe. Away from my property." No sarcasm. No lecture. Just the solution he should have gone with in the first place, because at the end of the day, I didn't create the problem. I just made sure it found its way home. So yeah, that was the end of it. A week later, contractors showed up on his side, reworked the pipe, redirected the flow properly toward the street drainage like it should have been from day one. And just like that, the mysterious water problem disappeared. Funny how that works, right? And here's the thing. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel like I won. If anything, it just felt like things were corrected. balanced, like the system reset itself once both sides were finally playing by the same rules. But the whole situation stuck with me because it wasn't really about water. It never is. The lesson here is, people reveal themselves when there's a small imbalance of power, not a big one, not something dramatic. Just enough where they think they can get away with a little more than they should. That pipe. That wasn't just bad construction. That was a decision. A quiet little calculation that said, this won't hurt me, so it's fine. And you see that everywhere, not just with neighbors, workplaces, friendships, even families. Someone shifts a burden slightly off themselves and onto you. Just enough that it's inconvenient, but not enough that you immediately go to war over it. And if you accept it, that becomes the new normal. That's how boundaries disappear. Not all at once, but inch by inch. Now, from a practical standpoint, there are a couple ways this could have gone differently. I could have taken the legal route, filed complaints, documented everything, dragged it through the system. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that's exactly what you should do, especially if there's real damage, or if the other person refuses to cooperate at all. But in this case, I chose leverage over litigation. Because here's something people don't always realize. You don't have to escalate emotionally to respond effectively. You don't have to yell, threaten, or make a scene. Sometimes the most powerful move is just changing the conditions. I didn't block his water out of spite. I redirected it based on the same logic he used. I let the outcome speak for itself, and that's why it worked. Because remember what I said earlier, people like that don't respond to arguments. They respond to outcomes. This is a psychological trap a lot of people fall into. Thinking that if they just explain themselves better, if they stay calm, if they're reasonable enough, the other person will eventually get it. But some people already get it. They just don't care until it affects them. And once it does, suddenly the conversation changes. Suddenly there's room for compromise, for solutions, for figuring something out. Funny timing. Now, I'm not saying go out there and start building revenge projects every time someone annoys you. That's not the takeaway here. The takeaway is understanding where your control actually is. You can't control how other people act. You can't force them to be considerate or fair or even logical, but you can control what you tolerate. You can control how your environment responds, and sometimes that's enough. From a legal perspective, I was in the right. From a practical perspective, I was patient. But from a human perspective, I just refused to carry a problem that wasn't mine. And that's really what this comes down to. Don't absorb what someone else is trying to dump on you. Whether it's water, responsibility, or blame. Let it return to where it came from. So now I'm curious, what would you have done in that situation? Would you have gone straight to legal action, tried to negotiate longer, or handled it the same way I did? Quietly, strategically, and let the results do the talking. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read more of them than you think. And yeah, if you've ever dealt with neighbors like this, I know you've got stories. And if you enjoy these kinds of real-life situations where things get a little messy, a little psychological, and a little too relatable, go ahead, hit that like button, maybe subscribe to HOA Conflicts. I've got a few more stories that might hit a little closer to home than you expect.